Once again, we're coming back to our podcast.
Say what?
Second one. So we have named our podcast, it's the Say What Podcast. Now, if you've been attending the Grove, you've heard about our podcast, and you understand that we are using our podcast to kind of catch on to our Sunday sermon, because most of the time we don't have enough time to finish. Normally we want to investigate out the principles of what we're talking about a little bit further, and it's another way that you can connect and continue to grow spiritually throughout the week. So while you hear Sunday sermon, then now you can come in and we kind of go a little bit deeper with what we're talking about, explain it a little bit better. And so some of you all might be, after Sunday going, what did he say? Say what? like what was that? And so that's this point to be able to say what. We want to tell you what we were talking about. And then there's another reason that we named this the Say What Podcast, and that's because as I take constructive criticism from a select group of people, I'm not open to just being openly criticized, but there's a group of people that criticize me. You're one of them each week. And so what was happening is they were telling me what I actually said in a sermon is different than what I thought I said. And so most of the time I was like, say what? And so we got the Say What podcast, like, say what? So Tyler's going to take the first few seconds here to kind of ask me what I meant or why I said, or tell me what I said during the sermon on Sunday.
Yeah, so Phillip says a lot of crazy stuff, as you know, if you've ever been to any of his sermons or anything.
Sometimes
Apparently,
it's not on purpose.
Yeah, like Wednesday night, which I wasn't in there, but you said superfluous.
Yeah.
I thought that was a word.
Yeah, superfluous.
Superfluous.
I was reading it right out of Scripture, and I just sounded it out. I came from a school of phonics, so I just phonicked that, and it was superfluous in my mind. But it's not superfluous.
No, definitely not. That's not a word.
I think it's superfluous.
Superfluous? Never will be a word.
Well, it was Wednesday.
All right, so he said some stuff on Sunday, and I wrote some of them down. He said, and I quote, you said, I can't not do this.
Say what?
That's a triple negative, dude. I don't think that's possible.
Well, it's triple negative possible. I can't not do this. I can't not do this.
That means you can not do it.
Say what?
All right. Another thing you said, and I quote, they might be down here just to hear me. And then you went, yeehaw!
Well, when I think about people that just want to hear me, I'm thinking, yeehaw!
Right. Another thing you said, and this kind of threw me for a loop because I've never been to Ryan's Buffet, but you said, and I quote, we could wind up old and sitting at a Ryan's Buffet.
Have you ever been to a Ryan's Buffet?
I have not.
Say what?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, there's a couple of requirements. Number one, you can't take your dirty plate back to the buffet line. Number two, it is culturally not respected to start at the cookie end of the buffet bar. You've always got to go to the meats first. Number three, you've got to be over age 98.
All right. The next thing he said, and I have no idea what this was talking about, he said we might be walking around with a George Jefferson.
Say what? Okay, so what I was talking about is sometimes in your walk, you say swag. Mm-hmm. Now, when I was growing up, we were all moving on up. And you know who was moving up? George Jefferson. He put it back. He did you don't know about that?
No.
All right, sorry.
The last thing you said, and this is probably my favorite because it fits you so perfectly. And when you said it, I could picture you doing this and saying this. You're talking about people coming in, and then all of a sudden, in the girliest girl voice you could, you went, security!
Well, what happened, I don't remember exactly what I was talking about, but any time that I think of shouting for security, it's in a very high-pitched noise. Because, if you're shouting for security, you're not manning up. It's not like you're in a situation, you're like, security. If you're in a situation where you need security, normally your emotions are high, and it's going, security!
Yeah, I can see you doing that.
I have to. All right, so that's our Say What. We have a lot of fun here. We don't take ourselves too seriously. I try to get it right, but there's a lot of times I just say something that I shouldn't. Say what? So let's keep going with our say what, which is the real reason that we're gathered here is not to pick on me, but let me explain myself a little bit further about Scripture.
Yeah, no, man, it's been a great 2 Sundays since you've been back. I've just seen your passion and how on fire you are. You've been going through Luke 10, chapter 27, or verse 27. It says, "And he answered, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And you've been using that verse, and the first week you talked about generosity, you talked about the strength, and talked about wealth when you break that down. And then this week you talked about loving with all your soul and all your heart, talking about your passions. What did you mean by that?
Well, one of the things as we look at Scripture and we look at loving God, as we addressed last time, we want to love God the way He wants to be loved. So we talked about generosity. People have been responding. We've seen so many generous acts coming out of the Grove. But then one of the things that we want to make sure that we don't do is just throw our wallet at Christ, just throw money at Him, thinking that that's good enough. Like, we buy into this mentality that I love God if I show up and give, and we want folks to give. That's part of His love language. But the other part of that, and it's is equally important, is this: God created you for a purpose. You're not by accident. He didn't put you here by accident. No matter what your situation is and how you got here, what your parents are like, or what you've been through, there are no accidents. When God created you, He created you with intentionality. And so if He creates you with intentionality, then He gave you a purpose with intentionality. In fact, Ephesians says that when you come to know Christ, that you are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which He prepared beforehand that you would walk through them. So here's what we have to come to understand, is that there are things that are going to naturally be your passions. That's what you love to do. That is who you are. Like you love basketball. If we see a basketball court, if there's a hoop, if there's something that looks like a hoop, if there's a ball laying around, you're shooting it. You're probably going to dribble it. You might do whatever. Sometimes you're so passionate that you're a ball hog, and so I'm just kidding. But you're passionate about it, so it kind of drives what you do. Well, God created us with certain passions, and if you here's the important thing: when He says, "I want you to love Me with all your heart and your soul," what He's saying is He says, "I want you to love Me with your affections and your passions," and the only way that you can do that is to live out your calling and the passions that you have for life and through Christ for Him. Give that life to Him in a passionate way, and then let Him use that to minister to others. So Christ talks about it, Deuteronomy talks about it, but we have got to get to a place to where I'm not just living life, I'm thriving in life, and the only way that I can thrive through life is tapping into those passions and living it out.
All right, so you talked about living out your passions. Why is it so important to live out your passions or your purpose in this life?
Well, one of the things that we talked about, we were also in 1 Corinthians 9. Mm-hmm. And the verse says this, and Paul's writing, and he's used all chapter 9 to say, I'm preaching the gospel, I'm sharing the gospel, I'm living on purpose, I'm living out ministry, I'm passionate about it, and so much so that I don't take some of the rights and the privileges that come with that are due me. I don't let, I need to be treated this way, and they don't do right by me, and they hurt my feelings, and I'm the last one to do this, and they expect me to they hold me to a different standard. He didn't let any of those things be an excuse. And then he gets to the reason that he doesn't let that be an excuse. And here's what he says: "For if I preach the gospel, I have nothing to boast of, for I am under compulsion, for woe is me if I do not preach the gospel." Now that's passion. And what Paul says is, he's saying, I'm living my life in such a way that I've tapped into this thing that it compels me. I am compelled to do something. You ever been compelled to do something before? You see somebody hungry, you feed them. You're compelled. Well, you didn't get up that morning and say, I think I'm going to go to Arby's and buy that guy a sandwich and give it to him. You saw him, you looked at him, it compelled you, right? You met your wife, you married her. Something took over your heart and said, you are compelled to marry her. And Paul says, I'm preaching the gospel without looking at all these things. I'm not using any excuse like some of us do. I'm not going to do this. They hurt my feelings. My goodness, I've had my feelings hurt. I've hurt people's feelings. It's unfair sometimes how people treat you. They talk to you different. They hold you back. They do all those kind of things. And if I quit doing what God's called me to do, then it would be easy to say, well, I never was compelled, or it's not passion. See, passion ultimately, you know what passion means? Passion means the thing you're willing to sacrifice for. You're willing to suffer, literally suffer for it. And in fact, the archaic language, they use the word passion to look at martyrs. And when martyrs were suffering, they said they've got passion. So when God wants our passions from us and to live it out, there's a certain amount of suffering that goes on with that, because it's hard to do what you do. And so people say, how do you keep doing that? Why do you keep going? Why do you keep giving? Why do you keep serving? Because I'm passionate about it and I'm compelled. And so that's why it's important. If you don't find what you're passionate about and live it out, you'll always live this substandard, sub-happy, easier life to get by, because the moment that you find your passion, you begin to thrive, but then hell comes against you to make you stop living your passion, because Christ is getting the most out of you and he's receiving the most glory, because that's what you were born to do. And so you suffer a little bit. It's hard. You got to pay the price. And ultimately, by living out your passions, God gets all the glory. So it's really important that you find that. You find that thing that you go, if I don't do this, remember that triple negative? I can't not do this. But realistically, is what Paul's saying, is that I can't not do this. And we've got to find that. We've got to find that in life. It's important.
So that's good. You're talking about people being compelled to do something, finding that passion that compels us with individual people. But what role does the church play in that?
Well, the church, and this is where we were driving to on Sunday, one of the greatest understandings about the church is that you come to the church, if you join a church, if you participate in a church, you don't come just to listen. And that's where I got in that yeehaw the moment, is the fact that it sounds great to say, yeah, there's all these hundreds of people that come to the Grove, and it would be really easy to think, well, they're just here to hear Phillip. But if I lead that way, if I think that way, if I'm motivated that way, then I've done you a disservice, I've done the body a disservice, and ultimately Christ a disservice, because the church isn't living out his passion. Now, sure, they want to come to hear communicators that they can relate to, or they connect with, or they hear from God from, however all that works out. But the next level of that is if I'm here and I'm participating, I should be living out my passions through Christ, through the church. There's certain ways that you can live out these passions. And the church is set up to be that first layer. There's ministries here. There's serving opportunities here. So how does the church come alongside of you and say, hey, I want you to help you find your passions, and I want you to live those out? Well, we got service opportunities. So let's say your passion is teaching. Guess what? There's all kinds of ways that you can just walk down that road of those passions by being a Sunday school teacher. Mm-hmm. My passion is children. Guess what? We got one of the most thriving children's ministries in the area. We got kids all over the place. If I love kids and being a part of kids' lives and all those kind of things, guess what I want to do? I want to live that passion out through the church on Sunday mornings by being a Sunday school teacher, a facilitator, helping them with games, whatever it might be, or Wednesday nights. Now I'm living out my passion. And people's life changes. So now they're getting up and they're going, I can't wait to get back down there. Boy, I'm building relationships with these kids. I'm building relationships with these parents. I'm doing all these things. I'm starting to come alive. I do my day job to get to my other job, because that's what I was born to do. That's where my wheelhouse is. We got people, they got passions in feeding people. They love to cook. Well, that's awesome, because I can't cook. I cook ramen noodles, cereal. Outside of that, I'm just kind of whatever. But there's people that cook. So guess what they do? Their passion is feeding. They feed people here. They make casseroles. They take it to people's homes. They feed on Wednesday nights. They are constantly working within that wheelhouse and that passion. So the church comes alongside. And it's not always teaching a Sunday school class. Sometimes it's feeding people. We got people that love to work outside. They love to do projects. They love to help others get further down the road of life. Guess what they do? They take their chainsaws and they cut firewood. They're passionate about it. I don't know if you get fired up about a chainsaw, but these guys do. I mean, hey, they're ready to go. That's passion. So the church has to come alongside and help that. Now, in some instances, that passion is going to be to the next level. And you're going to have a Tyler Brown that's going to come through church, and he's going to fall in love with Christ, and he's going to give him his heart and his soul. And the passion that he's going to show is going to be towards serving in full-time vocational ministry. So then that passion goes to the next level, right? It's not good enough, and God didn't call you just to show up, once a week or whatever. God said, I want your life for this. So then the church has to come alongside and go, let me help you with that. Let me show you what that looks like. Let me help you prepare yourself. Let me love you through this process. Let me go alongside of you, make sure you don't fail. So the church's role in this is huge to get people out of the seat from listening, take what they've heard, and use it towards that one calling that God has on their life.
That's good. So we have a lot of people that are currently serving, like you said, chainsaw ministry, disaster relief, children's ministry, student ministry, whatever you may work in. What about people that don't serve? Why do people still not serve or come in here and listen and then leave, and that's their ministry?
Well, I think that's the thing that, when we talk about this, and sure, I mean, I've got my share of haters, right? We got churches that don't like us or whatever. But here's what I would say to not just the Grove, but churches as a whole. So I would like to share this with anybody that's listening or participating. And by the way, I hope that they're subscribing to our YouTube channel. Just go to the Grove YouTube channel and subscribe to it. You don't have to be a member of the church. And every time we post one of these, you'll get it. And so use it back at your church, wherever you're going. This is free stuff. But here's the deal: is there's so many people that make up excuses why they can't serve. And what they don't realize is, and here's one thing that you need to understand, is when you choose not to serve, you choose to come to church here or wherever you go, and all you are is a Sunday morning attender. I love you. Thank you for you. We couldn't do what we do without you. But here's what I want to hear you. What I want you to hear me say is this: is you're only getting one aspect of this Christian walk. The aspect of the Christian walk was never intended to be just listened to. It was to be acted upon. And if God spent so much time to intentionally create you, then He has intentionally created things for you to do. And if you don't find what those things are, you will always walk around feeling like there's something else. I'm missing something. What is it? Something missing in my life. You'll try to fill that with your hobbies. You'll try to fill that with just extra time. You'll try to fill it with traveling. You'll try to fill it, but it'll never really fully be satisfied until you find that thing that God created you for. And so people that don't serve have a lot of different excuses. Number one, I'm too busy at work. You ever heard that? Mm-hmm. You're not too busy at work, are you? You never work.
Yeah,
no. Listen, if your excuse is I'm too busy at work, I understand. Man, we work a lot of hours. We do all that stuff. I know the typical response to preachers is, do y'all ever work? But we do, and it's not typical hours. We don't come in at 4 in the morning and get off at 3 in the afternoon. I mean, it varies. But I understand being busy at work. But your work job should never get in the way of what God's called you to do with your life. Here's the reason. If you're too busy at work and you think, well, I'll do it later, or I'll do it when I have more time, or I'll do it when I retire. Can you imagine? Let's just say God gives you 70 years to live. I think the average age is 72, 76, is somewhere around there. So let's say 76 years. Let's just go ahead and be gracious. God allows you to live 76 years, but you can't retire till let's just say something happens. You can't retire till 65. So you are too busy for 65 years of your life, right? You got one life to live. You're too busy for 65 years. You retire at 65. You spend the first year trying to figure out what God wants you to do now that you have all this extra time. And then you spend the next 9, right, trying to live it out. So you have spent your life, all of it at work, and maybe give God at the end of it, if your health hangs in there with you, maybe 9 years of your life. Out of the course of a life. Now, to me, that's an unrealistic expectation of serving God. Don't put Him off. So they're too busy at work. They're too busy with their family. Sometimes you hear people say that a lot. They'll say, I'm just too many family commitments, Well, here's the thing. I've got 5 kids. There's always something going on, man. But you know what I found? If I'm going to leave a lasting impression on my kids, sometimes I have to say, you know what, guys, listen, to my boys, to my daughter, is you're going to learn more by watching your dad thrive in life, going after what he's been created for, than just living out life, right? So I'm actually showing my kids what life's all about. So then sometimes they just, no one asked me. That's an excuse. People don't serve because nobody asked me. Well, you know what? If I went to lunch like that, my wife said, "Did you eat lunch?" And I said, "Well, nobody asked me." You know how many times I would not eat? You know what I do? I don't wait until somebody asks me. I ask them. That's why we're going to eat lunch together today. Is because I ain't waiting on you to ask me about lunch. I'm asking you. Same thing about serving. If you always wait on somebody to ask you, then you'll never be the one to actually do it. So just go ahead and ask, get involved. So, that's some of the reasons that people don't ask. And then sometimes people just don't want to. I just don't want to. So then I would say, well, it's hard to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength if you don't want to. I just don't want to. That you might need to get your want to's changed. Mm-hmm. So that's why some people don't serve.
All right, so you talked about reasons people serve and why they don't serve, maybe excuses why. So why is it so important for people to get involved and get included in serving?
Well, when you take on loving God with all your heart and soul and loving Him with your passion, and that passion looks like what Paul says, I can't not do this. When they start to live it out, and let's just use the local church first. So you have all these service opportunities, whether it's Sunday school, it's outreach, it's hosting, it's greeting people, it's prayer team, whatever it is, and every church looks different. But once you get involved, what we have found, statistically speaking, and Tom Rainer talks about this a lot, but one of the things is people that take their walk to the next level of I'm just attending to now I'm serving. I attend and I serve. They are people that are more likely to be more consistent in attending church and participating. So I want to use my service for Christ, but Christ uses my service to keep me plugged in. So I can't serve effectively if I'm not there, and if I'm there, then I'm serving. So part of the importance of serving through the local body and through the church, or wherever you go to church, and hopefully you are here at the Grove doing this as well. But wherever you go, here's what happens: is when you decide to serve, it raises your awareness to be more consistently involved. If I have no skin in the game, I'm just coming up to listen, then it's easier for me to lay out. It's easier for me to make other things to do on Sundays. But when I go, man, they're dependent on me, and I've got a passion, I've got a purpose. There's no place I'd rather be. I want to be here, right? You take the guys on a football team or a baseball team, basketball team, you're a player. Do the guys that are starting not show up? No, they're there. It don't matter who you're playing, they're in the building. Now, the guys that ride the bench all the time, sometimes they say, I'm not feeling good. I'm just not feeling it tonight. And then they lay out. I've seen that happen. I coach kids. I've seen that happen. But the guys that are playing, they're always there. It don't matter what the weather is. Doesn't matter. Same way with church. If you just ride on the bench, But if you're actively playing and participating, I got to be there. People are dependent upon it. And then, another reason is they're more apt to give generously. Most of the people that end up being offended about being a generous giver, and by the way, the Grove has responded great over the past 2 weeks, giving generously, and we've got to keep that up in a consistent basis. That's how it changes things. It's not just once every 6 months, but consistently giving. What we found is people that are frustrated or don't like to hear about money or generous giving or whatever it might be, or people that's probably got no skin in the game anyways. They just don't want somebody else telling them what to do. But people that are involved and are serving see the needs, see why it's important, and so they're more apt to give generously because you're there, you're on the ground, you're a part of it. You understand why we cut firewood, you understand why we meet people in the parking lot, you understand why we spend so much time with our children and with our students, and so they give generously. And then number 3 is this, people that are plugged in, they are more apt to pray for their pastors, pray for their fellow church attenders, the people in their small groups, because they're aware of what's going on. It's hard to pray for people if you're not there. If you're, sometimes we have people say, I didn't know that was going on at the church. And I'm going to go, well, how would you have known? You weren't here, right? But if you're here, everybody knows. So the same thing is with life is, people that are struggling, people, you can't pray for your pastor if you don't know what's going on with him. How are you going to know what's going on with him? By being here. Can't pray for that Sunday school teacher unless you know. So there's major moments. They are more apt to be there consistently. So serving helps you stay plugged in, right? Some of you have husbands or wives or kids that are not really plugged in. They come and they go. They're not as consistent as you. And you're going, how can I get them more involved in church? Give them a place to serve. Get them plugged in. Give them responsibility. And don't just give them a responsibility just a need and we're just throwing them over there. Find what they love to do. Find that passion and go, here's a place to serve. And all of a sudden it turns around. You want to see them give generously, get them involved, let them see the needs. You want to see people participate in prayer and loving one another where they are. We celebrate together, we mourn together, we pray together. How do we do that? By getting plugged in and being a part of it. And then, last but not least, people that serve are more motivated to see the church continue to grow because they bought into the mission and the vision of Christ for the church. So you want to be a part of that for that reason. Yeah.
That's good. You said earlier that realistically we probably have 76 years or around there in this life. How can I make sure, or anybody that's watching, make sure that they're making the most of this life? Or what questions can we be asking to be asking ourselves so that we can be involved and start serving and be passionate about church?
Well, let's kind of wrap up this podcast with this, and then we'll have a new podcast next week. And of course, Sunday I'll continue with this lesson. And so, if you're driving, if you're just sitting at your computer, I'm going to wrap this up with this. If you want to make sure you listen, let me give you something sober. Just sober you up here real quick. The life you're living right now is the only one you got this side of heaven. Now, you will, if you know Christ, you will live eternally, right? And we will live the rest of our life eternally in heaven. But this life that you have on earth and the one that you're living is the one you're living now. That's it. You don't get a second chance at this. You don't get a do-over. You don't. I was watching E.T. with my son last night. E.T. still pulls at me, and when E.T. gets on the ship and he starts to go away, his finger and it lights up and he touches. He says, "I'll be right here." You know, all that stuff, right? And because it's over, he flies off. It's done, and your life will end one day. It's going to end, and the question is not going to be what you regretted about life. The question is going to be, what did you do with your life? What did you do with it, man? Some people are going to sit here and watch this, and you're sitting at a cubicle, and you hate your life. Not like desperately hate it, but you're going, what am I doing? You hated getting up this morning. You hate going home later. You just are frustrated. You don't like it. And you know what the Bible says? Change it. Life is too short to keep living like that. One guy says it this way. He says, if you'll find what you love to do and do it, and if you can make that your career, you'll never feel like you worked a day in your life. So what we got to do, and here's this pastor's heart would be to you, is you need to take a hold of life the way that God intended you to live it, as his workmanship, walking in the good works that he prepared beforehand for you. And then you'll find that you don't dread life, you don't hate life. Life has bumps in the road, it hurts, but your life is thriving. There's nothing that could slow you down. It might hiccup you for a minute, but you're thriving. You're in your wheelhouse. So how do you find that life? I think the first thing you need to do is you need to ask yourself, as you're sitting there, as you're driving, you're listening to me, you're not watching, but you're listening. Ask yourself this question. What am I passionate about? I mean, what do I love? What are my affections? That's what the guy said. Your affections are like the rudder on a ship. It steers you. What are you affectionate about? What really you think about? It fires you up. That's where you need to start. And then not only do you do that, but then you say, am I using those passions? Is it just a passion? Is it just out there and it fires you up, but you don't ever do anything with it? The question I need to ask myself is, can I use them? If I have a passion for folks that are dealing with addiction, guess what? The Grove's got a place for you, because we're actively going after folks and helping them with addiction. So if that fires you up, let's roll, man. Thrive in that. If it fires you up to be a part of a team and to coach and do that, find you a place to coach kids in the name of Christ. Find that wheelhouse and go. And then the last thing that you need to ask yourself, and this is what I leave you with, is am I loving Christ with all my heart and soul by giving him those passions and bringing glory to his name? I had a friend one time that I served in a church with, and he was older than me. And this man was the main dude at a bank, president of a bank. And he was in Kentucky, and there was a preacher that came through and was preaching, and while he was sitting there, and he had a nice life, dude, nice watches, all this stuff. He's president of a bank, dude. I mean, it's a lot different than what we do, right? If you're a president of a bank and you're listening, you know what I'm talking about. God moved on his heart. He was young at the time, and what he did was he left that banking business, went to school, got his seminary degree, and began to serve in a local church. Took a pay cut, major pay cut, moved, changed his family dynamic, And he told me one time, he said, since that day, I've never worked a day in my life. You can't put a price tag on that. You can't be fearful of that. You've got to be willing to step out in faith and go, these are my passions. This is how I was made to serve Christ. And doggone it, I got 76 years. I got 72 years. Some of us, it's a lot less, 40 years, 50 years, whatever it is. I'm going to sell out to living that life. I'd rather thrive and not have a penny to my name than to be fully loaded in the bank and dread life. Christ gives you that opportunity. He says, love me with your heart and soul. When you love me with your heart and soul and your passions, you're on the right track.
Good.
So this has been a Say What podcast. Coming to you. Say what? Say what? And we will be coming back to you again next week. Join us Sunday at the Kingston location at 11 o'clock or at our LC location at 9:30. As we continue this, I'm going to wrap up this 3 Things God Wants From You sermon series. And then the following Sunday, I'm going to begin a series. Actually, on that Sunday, I'm going to do the Krispy Kreme series. It's going to be great for one Sunday.
Sweet nectar from Jesus.
Sweet nectar from Jesus. I'm going to give everybody that comes to the Grove on September 3rd a Krispy Kreme donut. I'm being generous. Everybody, say what? Hey, we love you. I'll see you next week. Join us Sunday. Bye.